there were 9,900 American planes that went down, a mix of mostly bombers, some fighters, and other aircraft. And in those planes, there was roughly 90,000 American flyers. Of the 90,000 lives, there were 70,000 that were killed in the event of being shot down, either in the air or coming down in parachutes and being killed by civilians or killed on impact of the aircraft. And 20,000 became prisoners of war.
I went up the top hatch, and I came down, right, and the Germans were waiting for me. And the first thing they said, "For you, the war is over." I think they take that in basic training.
I landed maybe 30, 40 feet from a row of trees. I saw people in fields around me as I glanced around, but from there you don't know whether they're good people or bad ones. And so as soon as I got on the ground, as soon as I saw the tops of the trees, you hit the ground the same instant. I mean, then you realize when you're down even with something, you realize just how fast you are going, because the last 50 feet was before I could blink.
We were told to free fall because occasionally German fighters shot guys falling in a parachute, and I didn't look forward to anything like that. Plus, you didn't want the people on the ground to see you. We were at 28,000, so I imagine I fell 15, 17,000, something like that. It's pretty windy at that speed. Then I got to the ground. Before I was in the chute long enough to see there were people all around that saw me as soon as I opened my chute. So all my precautions didn't help much.
Pete and I landed in this little open area in this forest. And he got caught up in the tree, and his feet were about 6 inches off the ground. And I landed right out in the open in mossy area where it didn't hurt me a bit. And I carried a knife all the time. I ran over and cut him down.
I heard you could guide them damn parachutes, but I couldn't guide mine because one of my arms was shot up too bad. And so I just landed in second growth timber. It was no harder than jumping off the bed.
I jumped about 900, 12,000, over 1,000 feet. And parachute worked. They always told us, the girls who packed the parachute said, "Now remember, if it doesn't work, you can bring it back and we'll give you another one." But this one worked.
All of a sudden, there's a big noise and an explosion back up here, and I have a steel helmet on and a flak suit, and I feel the force of it, and I look down and my navigation table is gone, just gone. You're just smoking elements around, you know. I come out of the bomb bay doors, I kind of lift myself up, and I'm looking at the co-pilot, and he's looking. I yell at him, or he looks around, and I say, "Come on," and he said, "Go on," to me, and now I know he was badly wounded when he went like that, and then the plane did something, and I fell out. I didn't bail out. I fell out. I just fell backwards out, and it goes from all this noise and smoke and confusion, and all of a sudden you're floating through the air, and it's quiet.
The Hitler Youth, you know, the 16, 15-year-old kids, the company of them came out. They were beating the brush for me until they found me. And they were pretty nice. And this German guard, the soldier that was in charge of him, he came up to me and he pulled his pistol out and stuck it right against my temple. And he said, "English or American?" And then, you know, you got to think twice before you answer that. You got to try to figure out who in the hell he was mad at. If you said English, and he was mad at the English, he's going to shoot you. If you said American, and he said if he was mad at the American, he's going to shoot you. But if you said English, and he found out you were American, he was going to shoot you anyway. So he asked me, and I said, I'm American. Oh, he says, scoot, stuck his pistol back in, and we walked leisurely out through the woods. I couldn't walk very fast because I had a piece of shrapnel about an inch long stuck in my heel. And we ate blackberries, and we tried to, I couldn't talk German, he couldn't talk English, but we got a few things out of, and he was nice, and they put me in a car, little Volkswagen, took me to this Gestapo place up on the hill. Then the guy that was so nice, when he got up there and the Gestapo got there, he yanked the door open, grabbed me by the collar, threw me out on the ground and kicked me 2 or 3 times and cussed me out in German. I guess he was just doing that for the Gestapo's benefit.
We were quite close to the Yugoslavian border. Graz is right there. And we thought we had a pretty good chance. So Pete and I started out. Then we heard some noises, people coming up behind us. So we ran up into the brush and hid. And here was the rest of our crew that had been captured. And they were marching in front of us. So we just kept quiet and let them go. So we walked all that day and then all that night. And the next morning, I don't know how far we got. It was mountainous territory. He was in a lot of pain, and we came to a house. We were up on a hill looking down on this house, and it was just dawn. And we stayed there and watched the house to make sure there wasn't any men around, maybe just women, or maybe it wasn't occupied. But nobody seemed to show, so Pete he carried, we were all issued a pistol, but I never carried mine. I had a knife, and I didn't know what good a pistol would do anyway, but he gave me his pistol, and he went on down to the farm to get his hands taken care of, maybe some kind of medication, and get some relief. So I sat there on this hillside watching the house, and he knocked on the door and went in. And then I went to sleep. And when I woke up, he was coming out of the door with an old man with a rifle in his back, a shotgun turned out to be. And so I figured we'd had it, except that they came towards me and then over to the left. And so I had Pete's pistol, and I thought it was quite an old man, about my age now. And he had this shotgun right at Pete's back and was marching him down the little trail. So I came in behind him, and I was going to hit this guy or knock his gun away, and we'd take off again. But he heard the brush snap or something. He turned around, and he had this shotgun. It was over and under barrel shotgun, and he was shaking, and I could tell he was going to fire, so I threw my pistol up in the air and I lit the ground, and he did fire right over my head, and it wasn't more than 25 feet away, I guess. So and then I threw up my hands and threw the gun up in the air, and so he had 2 of us now.
I got away for 5 days. Until I didn't have anything to eat. Wandered down, and I saw this little shack and farm shack, and went in the front door, and we went to the front door and knocked on the door, and in my high school German I said, "Ich bin hungrig," and I can't remember, it was a man, I think, and he went like that or something like that, and came out, brought me a plate of milk, or some milk and some bread. All of a sudden, a few minutes later, I saw these guys. I like to think they were in leather shorts, lederhosen. They may not have been. But they were walking out. I do remember they had 2 of the biggest rifles I'd ever seen in my life. And I said to myself, "Cook, you're not going to be a hero." And I took my .45 out, and I threw it as far as I could throw it.
He said, well, you will talk to me before we're through, I'll guarantee you. So he said, if not, you'll be shot in the morning as a spy. Just because you're wearing those clothes don't mean nothing to us. You know, you could be a spy and still be wearing an Air Corps uniform. So anyway, I guess he was trying to impress a kid. He did. So as long in the mid-morning, I think, he called me back up there again, or had him bring me up, and he said, you're not going to talk to me. And I said, well, you asked me all these questions. I don't know. I can't even tell you. I was only there in that outfit for 2 weeks. I don't know the name of the commander. I don't know the name. I don't even know the name of the outfit I was flying with. He said, I have more information about you than you do. And he said, he commenced to tell me the day we left the States that we'd flown over, what outfit when we went to Italy, then over to Corsica, everything. He said, I just wanted to see if you'd talk to me because you're very young. And he said, I'm sending 3 guards with you, and they're not to try to keep you from escaping, because I don't even care at this point whether you do or don't. If you do, you'll be shot. If you don't, think about it. He said, you've come this far in this war. We all know what's going to happen. He said, it's winding down rapidly. And he said, you guys know as well as I do how it's going to end at this point. Mind your manners. Do what's told. Don't do anything stupid. And you'll go home. That came from the German lieutenant. He was right.
He told me where I went to high school, who my friends were, when I shipped overseas. They had such detailed information on me that my mouth fell open. I'm sure I confirmed everything that they maybe didn't know by the expression on my face.
They knew my CO, they knew they knew the time that I took off, everything, and I just was amazed. They knew every name on the crew. They knew where we came from, Lecce, the whole works.
2 or 3 times a day or night, there would be this clump of people walking by, and then machine gun fire. And I said, shh, they're going to shoot me, you know. And I said, if they try to do that, I'm not gonna break. I said, I'm an American soldier and I'm gonna die like a man, you know. I really, you know, I was nutty enough to really feel that way, but I thought they were gonna kill me. I went into the camp and was processed, and while we were in there, the Germans had a loudspeaker system. And in German, I heard the words, Heute der große Kampf in den Westen hat begonnen. And there was a guy next to me. I said, what in the hell are they talking about? He said, the second front has started. He said, we've invaded. Heute, today, the great battle in the West has begun. Well, that was the invasion day. So they told us, you know, with their loudspeaker system in German. And I kind of said, oh, hell, we'll be out of here in 6 weeks. And then nearly a year later, I'm still there.
The treatment wasn't too bad. You could get an angry guard if he had gone home for the weekend and his house was blown apart while he was gone. He'd get pretty bitter. But and they had places where we could walk outside, and they had a wire about foot high, I guess, on pegs all the way around the compound. And if we set our foot on that, they would shoot us. And of course we knew that, so we didn't do it. And as long as you did what you were told, I can't say that the treatment was bad. The worst thing about that whole experience was lack of food. And the Germans themselves didn't have much.
Probably the first 4 to 6 weeks were the hardest part of captivity. Being captured is the hardest part, but the second hardest part then is trying to get used to being hungry, because you get, as time goes on and you lose weight, you get a little more used to it all the time. Some days they had very little, and other days you had a small, maybe 2-inch piece of black bread would be your share, and a small bowl of some kind of watery soup. Sometimes it had meat flavor, sometimes it didn't. I remember a couple of times the only flavor you could get out of it was the rotten potatoes they'd used in it. Anyway, I lost about 40, 50 pounds in the first 4 to 6 weeks, and then after that, why, you're just hungry, but you don't. It's not the foremost thing on your mind.
Every day, at least twice a day, we all had to line up out in front of our barracks, and Germans would count us. We lined up in fives, because that's the only way they knew how to count, I guess. Several times while we were out lined up, 3 Me-109s had come flying over. I don't know if they were training or coming back from a mission or what. I suspicion training. And they knew we were all flyers, so they'd buzz the field and peel off in wingovers, you know, showing off a little. Well, one day one of them peeled off and flew the thing right into the ground and blew up. And we all said, well, there's no way that guy could survive with 5,000 of us down there saying, blow up, you son of a bitch. We started cheering and doing stupid things, so they cut loose with machine guns over our head to calm us down, which did real quick.
The Germans had a fighter plane factory about 15 to 20 miles from our camp, and they were bombing it one time, and the air raider had sounded, and when the air raid sounded in our camp, you had to stay in the barracks. You didn't go outside. And I was inside the barracks, but I happened to look across. There was one of our enlisted men in the camp was standing in the doorway, and a German guard saw him and shot him dead.
I remember the first formation we had when we got there, they lined us all up and we all had to stand there at attention. And he said, gentlemen, I must tell you this, escaping will no longer be the sport. Anyone trying to escape will be shot. And we all threw our hats up in the air and cheered. And a couple of days later, somebody tried it. And he had a nice funeral. Escaping from Stalag 17B wasn't like Hogan's Heroes and the movie. It was damn serious business. You'd have to get shot.
I remember one time I walked in the room and they were getting this man ready to go out the gate as a German officer or German soldier. And he had a German uniform on, and he had a German rifle in his pocket. What the heck, how'd he get that? Well, it was a German RAF uniform, which they'd changed a little bit and cast the ornaments that go on the uniform, including the eagle. And then the rifle was made out of wood and been carved as a perfect duplication of a German rifle. And what they did, they had this man who looked like one of the Germans that came into the camp. He was just a spitting image. It could have been twins. It was remarkable. And they did this, had him wear this uniform with the necessary documents. When this other man that looked like him, a German, came into camp, this guy and I think 15 or 20 others went up to the gate, they showed their document. The German let him through because he had the regular documents, and he had a rifle, and he assumed he was authentic, and went out the gate. And so we had 21 out there, but they were allowed to lose about half a day.
There were very few escape attempts. If you wanted to make an escape, we had a panel of men that we'd have to go to get and present your plan and let them comment on it. And they'd either tell you no, or if they gave their okay, they'd give you all the help that they could with uniforms and that sort of thing. The only one I know that even tried was a fella. I don't even think that he got the permission from this panel, but I knew he was going, and he donned a white sheet of some kind, and it was snow on the ground. And he sneaked out of the barracks, which we weren't allowed outside at night, of course. And they had, all around the camp, they had the searchlights going, and they were searching back and forth, and they saw him, I'm sure, because they would go up one side with the searchlights, then it'd go down the other, and then they'd watch him move, and then they'd run the searchlight, never across his body. But he was itching his way to the fence, and I don't know what he was going to do when he hit the fence, but because there's 2 rows of fences with barbed wire in between. So he had a very poor plan. They let him go on for 3 or 4 hours, I guess, laying out there in the snow. Finally, they went out and got him.
Well, we were digging this tunnel, you see, and we're digging it. And the Polish Jews used to come in with a honey bucket to pump out the latrines, pump out the toilets. And we were going so far along with our tunnel, and the honey bucket weighed a lot of weight, and our tunnel wasn't far enough down, and so it collapsed. And there was, the Germans, as they go crazy when things like this happen, it's just almost first losing their tunnels, crazy, yelling and screaming. I mean, that's one thing. If you wanted to get a German's attention in those days, you just yelled at him. It doesn't matter whether you're a POW or not, but he's a German, and you yell at him, you got to have his attention right away. You just got to yell, and you have his attention. But anyway, the honey bucket went over this thing, and that was the end of our tunnel. You move a lot of sand. What the hell do you do with it, you see? That was the big problem, getting rid of sand. I mean, it's awful. Talk about logistics. But it was done, and we got rid of it. But Bert and I were just the moles. We were the diggers, And North Camp, the Great Escape, they had electricity down tunnels. They had a railroad for the things. Well, we just had sleds, and we had we used to get lots of margarine. And instead of oil lamp, we'd have a margarine lamp. It'd burn. It'd be a stinky thing, but it'd burn. But I would throw the sand behind for Bert, and he would put it on in and pull it to the cord, and away they'd go. No, it was a lot of fun. And of course, it was interesting to do. There wasn't much else to do. Well, there were other things to do. We played basketball, played games, but tunneling was our fort.
This guy built a vaulting horse out of an old Red Cross parcel box, and they put him in that thing, and then they hauled him out near the perimeter of the fence, and then he started digging, and then after he got through digging a certain length of time, he put the dirt up into the vaulting horse, crawled up into it, and closed off where he started his tunnel and camouflage it, and then they'd take it back into someplace and dispose of the sand. Next day, he'd do the same thing. And he'd keep digging. After he'd gone so far, they'd put him down there. He'd go out, he'd go into this tunnel, and they'd close it up. And he'd start digging. And as he dug, he pushed the dirt back behind him like a mole. And this guy made it. He moled out and escaped and got back to England.
One night, the guards came in on Rouse, and we packed up everything we could, and we broke up bed slats and made sled, our crew did, made a sled and put all we could on that, And as we left the gate, they opened the warehouse full of Red Cross parcels, and we took all of those that we could hold. So the first day or two, we did pretty well for eating. We had heard about this death march, in Bataan. We thought it was comparable, but of course it wasn't. But it was bad. The cold was the worst, and the hunger. They were moving all the air officers down south to be for Hitler's retreat, and we were going to be hostages. That was the story anyway, and I guess it was true, because that's where we ended up, down in Moosburg, which is very close to Munich. And there we were in huge big tents, a couple hundred in a tent, It was just packed, one body after another. Patton's troops came in, the tanks and all. we heard those rumbling up a couple of days before they came. And the guards there are all vacated. They left the gates open and all. And then the tanks came in, and it was real thrill to get liberated.
The orders were out, and that all came from Hitler, that all POWs were to be eliminated rather than be given back. The whole idea was if they had enough hostages prior, they could strike a better deal on a surrender, but if they didn't make the surrender, then the guards were to use their machine guns and wipe out as many as they could. And a few of them tried that at the camp that morning. Anyway, where we were, we could look across at a field, and we finally heard tank rumbling, which was a nice sound. And they were the ones that came to the front gate and pushed the fence and the gates and everything down. And the hearsay was that Patton himself, which we knew was there, had come in and saw how badly these guys looked, and it made him mad, so he says, let's go get the sons of bitches.
Our camp was bypassed we were up on the Baltic, and our camp was bypassed by the Russian troops, and we were left in a pocket up there by ourselves. And the Germans took off, left us there, and these two Russians came in the middle of the night, and they wore fez hats and had air-cooled submachine guns slung across them, and they came to liberate us. Then, of course, right away the rest of the horde came, and we were under the Mongols for a couple of weeks before the crack troops came back and restored order.
I got down to a little town called Gamelsdorf, and I could hear the artillery. I could hear 105s or whatever they were, 155s, and I knew the Americans were coming. And I said, "Geez, I'm just going to stay here. I'm not going to." And we were told the next morning we were going to go into the permanent camp, and then the capper was when that was the day that we were told by laughing Germans that Roosevelt is dead. Roosevelt is tot. Ha ha. And that, I'd never lost a president before. But I said to myself, I'm tired of this. I don't want to go back into another camp. The American Army is going to be here in the next couple of days. I'll just stay behind. And after 2 days, the artillery stopped. And I said, oh shit, they swung somewhere else, and I'm going to run out of food here, and I'm going to have to give myself up, and I don't want to do that because they'll kill me. And so I said, well, I know where I am, and I know where I have to go. And so over the next 10 or 12 days, I walked about 120 kilometers. And the only problem I had in traveling that is that I didn't have any papers, and I couldn't walk across a bridge. So what do you do when you can't walk across a bridge? You have to swim the river. So I was always wet. And there's nothing as wet as a GI overcoat. You can take your shirt off and dry your pants out, but that coat never dries. And I swam 4 rivers. Finally got down to the border, and I knew it was the border into Switzerland because I knew it was the Rhine River. And there was a barbed wire on the German side, substantial barbed wire, double system with tangle wire in the middle. Watched the German guards and their dogs walk it, so I used the same, and they would walk it at 4 o'clock, and then they would walk it the next morning. And I said, I got to get out of here. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to get out at night. So I got down to the wire, and of course then I realized that I didn't exactly know where the Germans had walked. And I started to say, this could be bad, because Germans were known to mine their barbed wire fence systems. either internally as you touch the wire or mostly in the ground, 3 feet down. So I started to dig, and I didn't have any tools, and I bloodied my hands and got through the first strands. The tangle wire was the worst because you can't avoid it. You know, you lift it, and just when you think you're out, it's caught your pants, and I ripped myself up quite a bit, and finally got through. And going through the last one, I was so afraid that I was going to die or be caught there and shot that my tongue stuck to the top of my mouth. And that's an awful feeling. I had no moisture in my body. So I was dehydrated, totally fearful. Then I stumbled, ripped my clothes, ripped my head, stumbled into the Rhine River, flowing rather swiftly because it's just coming down out of the Alps, and floated, with the flow of the river, and I could touch the ground near the bottom in most places, but I could swim too, and kind of got myself up to the other bank and just kind of collapsed, kind of fitfully passed out. Got up the next morning, all stiff, cold as hell, and stumbled out on this little road and walked along. I didn't know. I just knew I had to go somewhere, rather than just sit there and die. And I was stumbling along this road, and this guy on a bike came roaring around the corner, and he stops and gets off the bike, and he's got a uniform on. It looks like a German uniform, a blue-gray uniform. And I said, "Oh God, after all this, didn't I get out?" I thought maybe I'd cross back in or did some dumb thing. I was really almost delirious at that time, and I kind of stumbled to him, and I said, I got within about 20 feet. I don't know what I look like, but it would be nice to have that picture right now. But he was kind of apprehensive, because I was covered with blood and all sorts of things, mud and wet, miserable, mean looking probably. And I said, "Ich bin Amerikaner," and this guy said, "Je suis."
I have seen German soldiers who were prisoners in Russia coming home, and their filthy, dirty, greasy clothes, and maybe don't have shoes. And I think about them may not have any family left and no place to go. And I think about how fortunate I am that I had something to come home to. And those guys, granted, they did terrible things, a lot of them, but a lot of them were just young men like me.